Hello, everyone. So here we find ourselves in a brand new lesson. So you might think to ask, why are you talking about TypeScript in this course? And in fact, you remember back when we began and we were, editing the component app.component.ts in our first project. We mentioned something about using TypeScript throughout the course, but you also were basically thinking, well, it seems like all we need is JavaScript for Angular. So what's with TypeScript and what else aren't you going to tell me? Right. So, of course, when we ask this question, well, first of all, I'm going to tell you everything. But the first answer is TypeScript is the superset of JavaScript. If you didn't know that, wow, it just blew your mind. If you did know that, it's like, well, why'd you take so long to tell me? But in other words, TypeScript offers us all of the features of JavaScript as well as some additional features. For example, JavaScript allows for basic string, number, or object definitions, but we can't control them in the way that we can when we use TypeScript. So for example, let's say you have a number variable in JavaScript, but you use string or something else afterwards, and well, you won't get an error, but in TypeScript, you cannot do this because you will get an error while running before compiling. Remember that little example I showed you in the very first lesson? And the fact is that as you progress, it will allow more robust choices because your code is checked as soon as you write it. So in other words, the main benefit that TypeScript will offer us is minimizing the possibility of making mistakes by showing us these unexpected errors. So why don't we just use TypeScript? Well, the weird thing is TypeScript doesn't work either because it's basically not a programming language. Therefore, TypeScript is compiled and eventually converted to JavaScript. And that's why it works so easily on browsers. So CLI is needed within this build process. And if you're going to ask me why CLI, well, all right. Because it's thanks to CLI, this compilation process can be performed very quickly. And in the end, our code is run as JavaScript in the browser. So in fact, technically, we can prepare Angular with JavaScript, but yeah, it's not necessarily correct and a logical approach, because Angular was prepared with TypeScript, and we already mentioned that TypeScript has more features than JavaScript anyway, right? So that's why, and therefore, we're going to be working with TypeScript throughout the course. But don't worry, you're actually already a lot more familiar with TypeScript than you think. We're going to cover it all, and as you continue, you're going to realize how much you actually know about TypeScript because of JavaScript. So briefly, the working logic of TypeScript. I'll explain that before finishing out. Then we're going to dive into TypeScript topics. So first, we need to create a TS extension file to work with TypeScript. Then after writing our code into this file, we'll install TypeScript transpiler, and that will compile our codes. So the compiled codes will then be converted to JS extension files, so JavaScript, and then they'll be able to run on the browser. So yes, indeed, my friends, I hope that I gave you a sufficient answer to the question of why are we doing TypeScript, and now we can get into the TypeScript topics in the next lesson. I'll see you there.